How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Emerald City Hockey Postgame Live. Tough loss there, RJ, to the Calgary Flames. Really thought the Kraken could maybe do it there at the end, but the 3-0 hole from the first period was just a little bit too deep to crawl out of.
Yeah, and it feels like that's a story we've heard plenty of times this season, right? They dug themselves a hole early in the game, didn't start on time, made a furious comeback attempt. Even to the last few seconds, I thought they might have had it. Even after going shorthanded with maybe 2 seconds to go, they get that close chance, but just not able to come all the way back. And the Flames get a very valuable regulation win for their playoff hopes. And also, I hate to say it, but if there are any illusions about the Kraken's chances of making the playoffs this year, this should have put them finally to rest, as the Kraken are now 10 points back of Calgary. Calgary's got games in hand. We knew this wasn't happening, but I know it was framed by some as, well, this is the must-win game. You can kind of get back into it facing the team that you're trying to pass. They weren't able to get the points tonight.
No, they weren't. It does kind of seem like that's maybe the vibe already in chat. We kind of knew all along, like maybe they're playing better, maybe things could change, but it's just not in the cards for this season, unfortunately. Now, before I get to chat and the super chat that we've got there waiting, I want to thank Queen Anne Beer Hall for sponsoring this podcast, and RJ being 1,000 miles away from the beer hall again. I don't like it. Like in some ways, like, yes, this is a throwback, whatever, but I don't know. I prefer being up there and nearby.
Yeah, I agreed. It's not a fun throwback. And also, further from Moss Bay Hall, where they have their Lunar New Year menu too for limited time. That's really cool to see all the different things they have out there. Like the Kraken had their Lunar New Year night the other night. The Moss Bay Hall has their Lunar New Year menu that you can check out for the Year of the Snake. And they've been posting plenty on it on their Instagram as well. Queen Anne Beer Hall. So you can go out, check out some of the photos of the food that you can get.
That sounds awesome. Yes, definitely go check that out, everyone. All right, starting us off light with the super chat. Kakko and Shane points, moral victory in my book, but I'm sorry, the missed and no calls in the third were ridiculous. So, yes, Kakko getting another one, RJ, Shane Wright picking up another point, kind of continuing that. I'm with light. Those are great moral victories for this team. Those are, again, if you're not going to be in the playoff spot, you're not going to be able to make that playoff push. These are the things that you want to see kind of the rest of the year as a Kraken fan. I mean, there's lots of stuff to talk about when it comes to the officiating in this one, RJ, but specifically looking at the third, it did feel like the refs were like, this game's close. Let's maybe not be the ones to try to decide it.
Yeah, I think they put the whistles away for pretty much anything that wasn't automatic. The Shane Wright high stick late, that was obvious. They had called that. The Vladar delay of game, that's by rule automatic. They call that. But largely they did kind of put the whistles away. And I don't always have a huge problem with that. You don't want the refs kind of deciding a game like that in the third. I thought the most controversial one, certainly from a team complaining perspective, was really the icing call that was kind of iffy, that gives the Kraken that offensive zone draw. So it was kind of, I don't know that it went completely one way there in the third. Of course, a lot of the stuff really that we'll have to talk about is the first, but as far as the third, I don't know. There was a whole lot. It did go, as Sean said, putting the whistles away did go both ways.
It did go both ways. And I'm with you. I'm like generally in favor of if they're going to do that in a game. I think it was just, after that first period, they were going to be scrutinized no matter what. Right. And there's, for a lot of reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But Kakko, RJ, I know we've talked about it in the past, and it's just maybe because it's fresh on my mind because we recorded Red Glare for the Patreon earlier, and we talked about the salary cap going up. But are you worried that the Kraken did not extend him earlier, RJ? And now with the salary cap rising so much in these next upcoming off seasons, did they blow it? Did Ron Francis blow it by not giving Kakko like $7 million a year, RJ?
Well, I don't know how much time he really had before. That news was known by probably everybody on the inside that the cap was going up. And if you're Kakko, I don't know why you'd maybe sign right away unless they really made it worth your while. But no, I'm not too worried about it. And I think you still want to take the full season just to make sure that he really is as good as he's looked in these last, however many games. And I'm no reason to doubt that he is, but I just think you want as much of a sample size as you can possibly get.
Yeah. No,
but that shot on the goal, it was perfect. And it had to be perfect. Vladar got his glove on that. Vladar played that as well as any goalie possibly could have, with his size, with his reach, and put the glove in the totally right spot. But Kakko, no mistake on that shot.
No, he really, it does feel like being able to be on the first line, being able to get the minutes that allows him to have and all of that stuff that he kind of missed out with New York, it really does feel like it's kind of woken something back up in his game that had maybe been kind of boxed by the Rangers, as he was just kind of always put in that third line kind of grinder role, or more defensive role there. So I'm really happy to see him kind of make plays like that, where you're really like, okay, I understand why this guy was a second overall pick at some point.
Exactly.
Here at the start, now 3-7 on Linda Cohn games. I will say this. Probably no matter what mix you do, I know there's lots of people like talk about it on the Discord, whatever. Just when the seasons go like this, RJ, it is tough, and I don't know that anybody's got that good a record. If you're
I was going to say any combination you pick,
you
you probably don't have a winning record.
Yeah, it is a rough one. I also thought interesting call, both Allison and Linda going with the like kind of motorcycle jacket style look for this game. I was wondering if that was coordinated and planned, or if it just kind of happened that way.
Knowing them, I would not be surprised if it was coordinated.
Yeah. I thought it looked good. I thought that was cool. It's a different look than what we're used to seeing, and I like that. Freddie really needed that one. Like we talked about, if the Kraken were going to try to make that push that the team probably would like to make, obviously the players are going to be on board with making that. This was the one that they needed. And RJ, look, it felt like, and I even said this on Discord before the score had happened. Any scores had happened. We've seen this before. Kraken start slow. Calgary's kind of all over things, generating great chances. Joey's making big time saves. If they could survive that, you knew they were going to put on a push later, and they definitely did put on a push later. I thought they played better through the second than I thought they really played well in the third. It was just, again, getting out of that first period. If this team is going to start slow, it is absolutely crucial for them, and they just were not able to do it in this one.
And it's hard to do when you play, I'll say it, as poorly as they did in front of Joey Daccord throughout that period. Take the calls and all that stuff aside, the Kraken just did not play well enough in the first, especially defensively. I know you messaged me or the Discord, I forget, after the first goal, where I think it was the Discord, where you said you can't just let a guy walk in and get a clean shot like that when there's four guys all around him. You have to kind of converge and make sure to disrupt the stick. I mean, the Joey goalie interference, call, non-call, whatever, that happens because you have a player that is snuck by a defenseman and essentially has a breakaway. It's those kind of chances that you just can't allow.
Yeah, which happened several times. But yeah, that Morgan Frost one really kind of irked me, because you've got four guys there. Either of those two defensemen can step up and just lay him out with a hit. It's going to be legal, as long as you don't like just headshot him. It's going to be legal. He's got the puck. It's open ice. You can just do that. Similar to I know lots of people were upset with the Andre Burakovsky hit, right? But it's a legal hit. Like you could just do that. You can just kind of go after guys when they've got the puck. They're coming into your zone. Like, it's okay to step up and step into them. We don't see this Kraken team really do that at all. And I'm not like one that is going to be like, oh, hockey's got to be super physical and you have to be hitting everybody all of the time. But it's a tool in your toolbox if you are defending a single player coming in lone on the rush like that, and he's just going to set himself up in the middle. That's an option you have. All four of the players there also have the option just to poke the puck away, and Dunn kind of goes for one. Bjorkstrand's maybe reaching for one. I just don't know how you let a player get a shot that clean off when you have that level of defensive coverage around him. That to me is just a breakdown, and unfortunately it did kick off the scoring for Calgary there. Jeremy, what a bizarre game. Don't want to make it the ref show, but some consistency would be great. Obviously, it starts off kind of crazy.
Is it time
RJ,
to dive
right?
into everything?
I think it is. I think it is. We probably shouldn't
Okay.
bury the lead. It is the big thing from this game. So obviously, it starts off with the Jaden Schwartz goal getting called off. RJ, Calgary challenges him for goaltender interference. It gets called off. He is in the crease. He does interfere with Vladar's ability to kind of pull his stick back and reset and get set. And because Jaden Schwartz was in the crease, and him being in the crease kept Vladar from doing that, I understand why that goal gets called back.
Yeah, I do too. And this is a play where when you put yourself fully in the crease, there's no real contact from the defender. Schwartz is there, of his own design, right? You're never going to get the benefit of the doubt on one like that. And even a little bit of contact where it looks like Vladar is really trying to reset himself, that's going to get called back. You just don't ever get the benefit of the doubt when you're fully in the blue paint and you put yourself there.
Yeah. And so it is just what it is. We've kind of seen it before. Kind of seemed like everybody understood it. Like nobody's happy with it, obviously. And that would have been a big goal for the Kraken. They weren't playing great in that first period. To be able to take a lead would have been fantastic for them. And then obviously it would have helped later on with how the game went. And then the more controversial one, and I think kind of correctly more controversial just because there was a lot there. And a part of this play is later on when was it Sharon Govich?
Yeah, it was
Sharon
Govich who came in. Yes,
Sharon Govich comes in. He sneaks around the defender like you talk about, right? Calgary's already on a power play, which is also kind of key to how everything ends up happening. Calgary's on the power play, gets around the defender, comes in. Jamie Alexiak, hooks him, slashes him, whatever. As he's coming in, kind of he loses the puck. Like this is my recollection of it. He loses the puck. Puck comes in on Joey. I thought Joey kind of misplays the situation because the puck is coming in a little slow. Like maybe that just threw off his timing, but he kind of drops down. And I think he was just going to try to stop it with his stick and then probably reach over with the glove to cover it. But when he has his stick down, because Sharon Govich misses, kind of loses the puck there, he takes a swing at the puck again. It makes contact with Joey's stick. Joey's stick then gets, pulled out of position. It gets lifted off the ice. The puck slides under, and then it just slides kind of all the way through Joey, and it ends up going in. Now, also, after that kind of contact with the stick, Sharon Govich's follow through hits Joey's arm. It hooks Joey's arm. Joey's glove hand comes up off the ice and gets pulled back. It looks like goalie interference. Dan challenges it for the Kraken, right? He initiates the coach's challenge, but that challenge is ultimately unsuccessful, and the Flames get a power play both off of the goal wipes out the power play they were already on. They then get the power play from the Alexiak hook, and then they also get the additional power play from the Kraken losing the challenge, which is how that all ended up happening. I know it wasn't the refs did not really clarify the situation at all when they were doing the call, because why would they want transparency? But we did get transparency, RJ, on why the challenge for goaltender interference was unsuccessful. And I do kind of want to applaud Toronto for putting out the kind of statement that they did about why they decided to make the call the way they did.
Yes, definitely. An excellent summary of all the events there, Dylan. And so I'll read the official explanation from Toronto about why that goal was being upheld. And to me, it makes sense after seeing this, why it was upheld. And so it was determined by the stick-on-stick contact between Calgary's Sharon Govich and Seattle's Joey Daccord was an attempt to play a loose puck and did not constitute goaltender interference. So it was made in accordance with Rule 69.7, which states in part, the goal on the ice should have been allowed because, quote, in a rebound situation or where a goalkeeper and attacking players are simultaneously attempting to play a loose puck. I think that applies to the situation.
Yep.
Whether inside or outside the crease, so wherever, incidental contact will be permitted and any goal that is scored as a result thereof will be allowed. So that seems to apply directly to that situation. It is a rebound situation, kind of, the puck's going through. A goalkeeper and attacking player are both simultaneously attempting to play the loose puck. It's kind of there, and it is a loose puck. It's under Joey, but it is loose. That is incidental contact to Sharon Govich is attempting to play that puck. Kind of hits Joey's stick and glove, but that's the incidental contact. And so that just makes sense to me why by rule that goal counts.
Right. And I watching the replay as many times, it was not clear to me watching it like the first 3 or 4 times, because so much of it is like you just see that contact with Joey's arm and the way it kind of just gets ripped away. And it's just like, well, that kept him from, maybe freezing the puck. At first, I thought on the first couple replays, RJ, I thought the puck was under his glove, and then it gets lifted, and that's why the puck kind of goes through him the way it is, because to be honest, I'm just used to Joey being Superman and pucks just not kind of finding a way through him the way that actually ended up happening. But as they did more of that overhead one, I think that's when you kind of get a better idea of what ended up happening there. And I did, before they even announced that, I did put in the Discord, I think this is kind of what happened, is that Sharon Govich is going for the puck. He takes a swing at the puck. It's a wild swing, but you are allowed to do that. And again, I don't know if Joey was initially, RJ, going to go for a poke check there, or kind of why he decides to drop down the way he does kind of onto all fours versus just maybe dropping into butterfly and trying to just be big in front of that puck as it goes through. But for whatever reason, whether he was going for the poke check or not, that decision to kind of drop down, it meant that the only line of defense he had was that stick. It was out of the crease. And then when that attempt happens and it moves his stick, there just wasn't really anything else. And it was just able to go through him.
Yeah, my opinion on that, as far as why Joey drops down, I think he thinks Sharangovich is going to deke out to the backhand, like Sharangovich actually I think was trying to do. But he lost the puck.
Yeah.
And so if he did that, Joey was ready in there on it in position. It's just he didn't anticipate that. And so I think that's, you know, kind of why he did what he did. And I also see Marshiro. I just want to say I see you in here, and I appreciate you joining the post game live because I did interact with you on Twitter, kind of about you know, all the different things in the first period and the calls and whatever. So I'm glad you joined us here as we kind of break it all down. Just want to say I see you, and saying, you know, he still hit Joey's glove even if he was trying to play the puck. Dumb, but that's the incidental contact. That's part of the rule. And then one thing also that Marshiro did bring up, if I can just back up a little bit, that it brought up on Twitter, is the on the penalty. The reason the Kraken were shorthanded in the first place, Jared McCann kind of takes that extra penalty going after, I think it was Pahal for the Burakovsky hit, and saying, you know, talking about how the Flames, Pahal dropped the gloves first. Mm-hmm. But I think you'll consistently see on plays like that, he saw McCann coming at him. He was getting ready for the fight, for the altercation. Like, that is a play where it's a clean hit. McCann didn't continue playing the game. He went straight after Pahal, and they are still going to call you for the extra if you do that after a clean hit.
Yeah. And it's one where, again, it's not a situation we really see from the Kraken all that often. And so it's maybe a little like, you know, it definitely feels wrong in that situation. And look, I thought, because it's a clean hit, right? If you're going after somebody who just laid out a clean hit, like, you should probably get a penalty for that, because you're just kind of disrupting the flow of action. You're disrupting the game at that point if you're going to go after guys for just laying out clean but big hits. And so, like, I understand giving penalties in that situation that, you know, disproportionately affect one side, right? Like, in the sense that you end up with a power play for one side after it's all said and done. Like, I do understand why you would want that from just a game standpoint, because you can't have, after every clean hit, stuff happen and guys are trying to stop momentum from the other team and all of that go down. It would just make things take too long.
And if I can rewind a little bit further, because we do have a good question, I think, from Maddie, though. Does the incidental contact not apply to the Schwartz situation? And I saw that commented on Twitter a few times as well. Yeah. I don't think I understand why it's different, but I'm sure it is. At least this is my read of it on the Schwartz situation. As I look at the language there, where I think it differs is that you don't have a goalkeeper and an attacking player simultaneously attempting to play a loose puck in a rebound situation. That's, you know, Vladar is trying to set himself to stop a shot. He is not trying to play that puck. Schwartz is trying to play that puck.
Right. And I think that is a big distinction between the two plays, because I know a lot of people were just like, well, one is stopping the stick, the other also interferes with the goaltender's stick. Why are these plays not the same, right? Why is the result not the same of no goal? And I think it's because with Sharangovich, like, it is very much one where he is swinging at a loose puck that is, you know, there. It is there. It is loose. He is attempting to play the puck. Like, that's his primary thing that he's doing. Where I feel like with Jaden Schwartz, he's one in the crease, which is always going to be when they go to a review, even if it shouldn't technically change, but it makes a big difference for them. He's in the crease, and his contact is with his body. It's not from his stick as he's trying to play the puck. It's because his body is in the crease that it is keeping Vladar from being able to pull his stick back and do his job. So it's the contact is different because the two things making contact are different. One is somebody's body. The other is somebody's stick as he's attempting to play a loose puck. And I do understand why, from a rules standpoint, you would want those to be two different things, because you need to be able to, if a puck is loose around the goaltender, try to grab that puck, try to take shots there. Like, you don't want all of those to be called goaltender interference. You don't want situations like that to result in a bunch of no goal calls, things like that, when players are just attempting to do their job, which is to play a loose puck. But you definitely can't have I mean, unless you want everybody to really stack up the crease and make situations dangerous for the goalie, you can't have players in the crease then using their bodies to interfere and keep the goalie from being able to pull their stick back and play their position, because then, like I said, it would open up this Pandora's box of precedent of being able just to go into the crease and kind of do whatever to interfere with the goalie to get cheap goals that way. And it would just take a lot of, skill out of the game.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to go forward again to that play, the challenge, right, with Joey and that goal that was allowed to stand. The Kraken, of course, challenge that. They take a timeout first so they can look at it a little bit longer. They do decide to go ahead and challenge it.
Good call, in my opinion, too, because it was such a iffy thing
Good
to
call
do the timeout first.
Okay, well, question for you then, because I was saying good call to call the timeout or good call to challenge it, because this is one where I think it's just too risky of a challenge. And I know that's easy for me to say in hindsight, and I know it's such a close call, but looking at that, I can't really be, especially if you are familiar with the language of the rule, which I would hope that the video team would be familiar with the language of the rule. I don't know how you feel like you have a better than 50-50 chance of that getting called back. And look, if you're just going to go shorthanded 5-on-4, go for it all day. Go for it, just because you need that goal to come off.
But there's already that penalty.
You can kill the penalty, but 5-on-3, that's just a situation where you're kind of calling the game just about over at that point if you're wrong. And that just seemed like too big of a risk to me on something that seemed like a 50-50 type of thing. Do you agree?
Yeah.
You disagree?
I mean, benefit of having several more minutes of watching the play than they had when they had to make the call on whether or not to challenge it. Yes, I agree. It was not a good challenge. The reason I like the timeout, though, is because, look, one, it buys your video staff more time to look at a play that looked like at first blush definitely goaltender interference. So you want to give them that time. You really want to have them do that. And I think that that's a good reason to call the timeout. The second reason why it's good to call a timeout is, look, regardless of if you're going to challenge that play or not, you're going down 2-0, and the other team is getting definitely one power play, right? They're going to go back on the power play, and you're now down 2-0, and your team is not playing well, right? Like the Kraken were not playing well in that first period, regardless of the refs and all of that stuff. The Kraken just didn't have a good first period, as has happened several times this season, right? This has just been a constant struggle for them. So I like the timeout because it buys your video staff time to review the play more, which they probably needed just because of how much was kind of going on with that play and how egregious it looks at first when you first just see it, and you just see how much Joey's arm gets moved by Sharon Govic's stick and everything. So I like it from that standpoint, but I also like it just as a way of trying to regroup with that team. You're coming off of a power play that had roughly 30 seconds left. You're going to have to go back on the PK again. And so it buys your PKers time to maybe catch their breath some. It allows you to regroup with your team, kind of, splash some cold water on their faces, tell them, what the heck are you guys doing out there? We need to be changing XYZ. We can't be playing like this, whatever. I feel like it was a good timeout. I just think that, it's one where if the action is coming from a player trying to play a loose puck, like I really think that that's a pretty clear cut rule. And I think you just got to stay away from challenges that involve that.
Yeah, I think so too. And just given the risk there, I don't think the risk reward was the right call. But again, we have a lot more hindsight than they do. And real quick on the challenges, because we are getting some quotes coming out from our buddy Charles at Circling Seattle Sports. Of course, unfortunately, I can't be there at the game tonight, but we have the quotes coming out. So Jaden Schwartz said, not sure what they're watching. I think that it was a bad call. He put his stick in my skates, talking about, the one that he had that was called back, Capo Caco. So I don't know what the difference is, but that's not my job talking about the 2 goals. And then as far as Dan Biles, but talking about the explanation he got for the second one, the one we were just talking about, they judged that it was a continuation play by the guy reaching back for the puck, and him hitting our goalie's stick was a result of that continuation play, which that seems consistent with the explanation the league gave. So just want to throw those quotes out there as well. Yeah,
no, definitely. And I do want to kind of like, if there's more comments around all this, because I know it was just such a big part of all of this. I kind of want to like stick with any comments in chat that are kind of still around this.
Yeah. We can take a look.
Yeah. So let's see, bad call on the challenge from a couple people in here. Incidental contact should be for the hand that's not playing the puck. Joey's hand was trying to stop the puck. I don't think that Joey's glove hand was trying to stop the puck. Like, I just think it was supporting him because he drops down to like all four.
Yeah, and also again, there's nothing in the. I mean, really, it's the contact with the stick that allows the puck to slide over, right? That's already admitted. He is making contact with the part of Joey that is trying to stop the puck, but it doesn't matter. There's no language or distinction for that in the actual rule.
Yeah. I just think, that is part of it. There's definitely some stuff talking about the penalty thing that we were talking about earlier with McCann there. What?
Yeah, and then Julius was asking us. I know you did explain it earlier. I just wanted to be crystal clear on it. Wondering why the penalty called off after the Flames scored, like it would have been if it was a delayed penalty. The Kraken were already shorthanded. There was already a penalty up on the board with I think like 30 seconds or so to go on that. So that's the penalty that got erased with the goal happening. And so then Alexiak's penalty starts with the full 2 minutes. That's what happened there, and that is the rule.
Yeah. No, it is just a tough one there. And then I do wonder if Dan and crew would have challenged if the Schwartz goal hadn't been called back, whether they saw enough similarities from El Bell there. That is an interesting one too, that I would be interested to know, right? If you're thinking like, okay, they've already established in this one that a goal can come off the board from, seemingly incidental contact around the goalie's stick, I could see that maybe swaying that decision. If you are thinking it's a 50-50 call, maybe that pulls you more to one side of the fence.
And it does feel like I think it's a human thing, right? To think, well, okay, we already got one taken away from us. That's got to make it more likely, right? That it'll kind of even out, even if you're, not looking at the rule and the similarities, all of that stuff. It can be tempting to just think that way. And I certainly kind of thought that way, like, well, I bet this one will. I felt it was close, but like, I bet this one will, come off the board just because they took the last one. I don't know. I wasn't immune to that kind of thinking either.
No, and I think that that's fair because these are, as much as we can point to the rule.
If it was up to the refs, maybe that would have been the case.
I was just going to say, like, there is elements of, as much as like, we can look at rules and kind of treat them, similarly to like laws where it's maybe a little more black and white, whatever. At the end of the day, like, it is people making all of these decisions. Like, the NHL rulebook is remarkably vague, or it leaves a remarkable amount of stuff open to interpretation from the refs. Like, that is, if you go through the rulebook, it's pretty crazy. Like, go look at boarding. It's like all refs discretion. Like, there's very, you know what I mean? Like, whether or not it's considered like a charge into a board or anything like that, it's all refs discretion. A lot of the rulebook is refs discretion. So I do understand in certain situations, you saying like, well, I'm getting a vibe or a feeling from this officiating crew of X, Y, or Z. Let's kind of go with that. Let's go with that human element and kind of count on that. It's just with something like this, Toronto gets involved. Now the letter of the law is getting more involved. Unfortunately, this is one of the few things that they have actually written to be fairly clear and black and white in the rule book. And it just kind of comes back and hits the Kraken.
Yeah. And because it's necessary, they really have to write it in such detail, whereas the ref's discretion, they can kind of leave it.
Yeah. And I know there's, talk about Schwartz and how far into the crease he was and everything. I will say, like, he was in the crease for a long time, and he wasn't as deep in the crease once that contact was there, but like, he did hang out in the crease for a long time. And unfortunately, like, we do know, like,
and when the initial shot came in, I mean, his entire body was in the crease.
Yeah. It is one of those, like, you just have to be a little bit more aware, I think, if you're going to be on the ice. But we do have a super chat here from Elizabeth. I'm sorry I brought my Juju over. Seeing the bench, let me tell you, they were pissed. Larson was angry and hitting his stick so many times. I totally see why the Kraken would be upset, given that sequence of events. I mean, we know Joey was upset. I thought you did a good job of capturing that moment, RJ, where, he catches a puck, and instead of waiting for the linesman to come over and get the puck out of his glove, he just chucks it and gets it out of there as quick as possible. Like, he didn't want to interact with those guys at that point. I totally understand why the players would be upset, because, again, you had one taken away. You think it's pretty clear based on the limited replays you're seeing. You're the one actually out there sweating, bleeding, having, putting this full body effort into it. It would be really, really tough to kind of feel that powerless in that moment and feel like everything is coming at you when you are making that sacrifice out there.
Definitely. As a player, it's all so fast that it happens too. You don't, and as you're not seeing the overhead angles that we're seeing, you don't have the language of the rule book. You just know you're battling it out there, and you have one taken away from you on one that looks really close, and you have one, that's not taken away from them on one that looks really close. And it's hard to see the difference as a player. I think if any one of us were out there on the ice, in the position they were in, I don't think we would be able to really see the difference. We have the benefit of being up here and able to just kind of think about these things and watch the replay a million times. But I totally get the frustration from the players. I mean, from Joey, I get it too. And I don't know if the toss of the puck away was directed at the officials. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know for sure where his mind was at, but I feel like his frustration honestly would have been better channeled at his teammates who were just hanging him out to dry again. I think they were really both of that.
Yeah, it was a tough first period for sure. That being said, Elizabeth, I really don't think this was your fault. I think this is bigger than any one person in there. I'm happy that you made it to Seattle safely and everything, and I hope the whole trip goes better than tonight for sure.
Yeah, and hope I can meet up with you next game. I'm tracking to be just fine for the next one. Just wanted to be err on the side of caution for this one.
Yep. And then I do think this is an important comment as well, RJ, and I want to kind of read it as, we maybe wrap up talking about the whole controversy around the goalie interference calls. And that's from Striatic. The important thing for me is that they never gave up or let their frustration overwhelm their effort. And I do think that is important because, I talked about it earlier, right? This felt like one of those games where the Kraken, they come out, they have a rough first period, and then they get stronger as the rest of the game goes on to the point where it really felt like they were close and they had a chance to really make it happen there at the end, RJ. And that is impressive because those kinds of calls, and we saw how important they are. We saw how impactful they are, and how emotional the team was. We just talked about it. This is the most emotional on a, upset, angry side of things that I've seen Joey Daccord, right? I've never seen Joey Daccord throw a puck like that before, right? Lars, normally pretty cool, calm, and collected. He's banging his stick on the bench, right? Out of frustration. We saw them, arguably their most frustrated, and they were able to go into the locker room during that first intermission, calm down, refocus, go out there in the second period, and start coming back into that game, pick up a goal, go out there, play well, outplay the other team, and then make things happen. And I think that is really important. Or was the Kakko goal early in the third? Game was so long, I can't remember.
Yeah, the Kraken got one in the second.
Yeah,
they got one in the second.
So
they had that big push, and yeah, go ahead.
No, I just think that is important, and it is definitely something that deserves to be talked about.
Definitely. And I want to bring up the super chat here from Light saying, I'm just glad we aren't the losers who give up if we were trailing after 2 like last year. Clearly the needed culture change from last season has worked. I mean, as far as when they're trailing and in those situations, we got to remember the Kraken did not have a single multi-goal comeback win all season. And I've lost count of how many they're up to, like 6, 7, something like that this year, with a few others that were very close that were just a bounce away. And that is a pretty big difference from last year's team where, Dylan, again, we can't know for sure because it's just a counterfactual, but if this was last year's team and all of that happened in the first period, it's not even a close game. It's 6-1, 7-1 final, probably. They're just not able to bounce back from them and kind of get their footing at all, I'm convinced.
Oh, I'm with you there, and I do think that is a big deal, and I think Light is right. The kind of culture change that has happened this year, this is one of the positive side effects of it, and why it was so needed is that difference that I think we all see between last year's team and what they were able to do tonight. One of the other things that I want to talk about, and I know this is it was a big part of maybe the game chat on Discord. It's been a part of the earlier stuff in chat here. And that is just the fact, RJ, that this was the Flames. It's again, right? We're dealing with controversy and things around this Calgary Flames team. And so I want to ask you the question. I want to ask chat the question of, do we think that this is a rivalry? Obviously, Kraken fans do not have a lot of love for the Flames, right? They don't have a lot of love for guys like Pospisil and obviously what he did last year to Dunn and all of that kind of stuff. Do we think that this is a rivalry with the Flames? And does a rivalry kind of need to have that bad blood on both sides? Because I don't know that Flames fans feel the same way towards the Kraken, maybe in part because they always seem to end up on the, positive side of everything that ends up happening. But I'm curious about that.
Well, you kind of got into my answer a little bit in that I think it's not a proper rivalry, and really because any kind of animosity just seems like one way. Really, it's just on the Kraken side, and I think you see that from the players. But really, I think it's just because the Flames play this way. They're big. They go in on the forecheck. They will beat you up. They always look to finish a check. They will play right to the edge of the line and the edge of the rules. And in some cases, like often for Martin Pospisil, they'll step over that line pretty frequently. And so I think the Flames just bring that regardless of who their opponent is. And it's just not something that the Kraken see every single game because they're not playing the Flames every game. But they have been on the receiving end of some of that, and especially on the crossing the line side, like with Pospisil on Vince Dunn. We of course remember that from last year, but like Dunn's hardly the only player that Pospisil has injured with a dirty hit. The Flames just kind of do this. So no, I don't think it's a proper rivalry. I just think it's kind of one-sided because the Flames will probably stir up a lot of hatred no matter who they play against.
It does seem like chat is there with you. Doesn't look like too many people consider it a rivalry, but they're definitely not Pospisil fans. I do like Carl's comment here. I hate Pospisil enough to know how to spell his name. And then there's Light. No, it's not a rivalry. The Flames are just full of dirty players who are willing to go out and hurt our guys with intent, which is kind of speaking towards what you were talking about there as well. And Elbel, to be honest, I hate the Flames when we play them, but then forget all about them when we're not. It's probably fair, and yeah, that probably does mean that it's not a rivalry.
Yeah.
If that is
Freddie, if you have to ask, it's not a rivalry yet.
Yes. And then let's see here. Us and the Canucks since year 2 has been a rivalry. It's actually back and forth from Light. I don't know. I think of the Canucks as a rivalry. I think when I think of rivalries for the Kraken, I know this is maybe getting a tiny bit off topic, but just to kind of close it out with everybody, I think of Colorado because of the playoff series, and there was back and forth kind of stuff going on there. And I think that playoff series, as you've always said, right, rivalries are built in the playoffs. That was an example of that. That's really the big one that I think of in terms of like Kraken rivalry.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think,
and both fan bases having that like kind of, vitriol towards the other team.
Yes, and I think the Kraken actually don't have a proper rival yet, and that might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm telling you, when you get one, you'll know the difference. But Colorado is the closest thing that they have, I think, because I think a big key element of the rivalry is that what both teams, I think, have to take something very important that the other one wants, take it away from them. And I think the Kraken have that in the first round series win. I mean, that's a year of Colorado's Stanley Cup window. The Kraken slammed shut, right? And Avs fans, I think, can be a little bit upset about that. Of course, the injuries caused in that series, I think, ratchet up the rivalry. I think if you don't have the McCann injury, the Cogliano injury, in both of those, then maybe it's not, as contentious as it is, but I still see the fans get into it. I think it's the closest they have, even though, give it another playoff series, I think it could elevate to a proper rivalry, but just given that it's just the one thing that happened, I don't think it's a full rivalry yet.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And people have different takes here in the chat as far as Colorado, but it seems like Colorado is certainly more thought of as a rival than Calgary is there as well. Let's see here. I'm going to try to go back up in chat to try to find some stuff that maybe got skipped over. I know a lot of it was built around the stuff that we spent a lot of time talking about, those controversial calls and everything. And I know like earlier there was the conversation around, we talked about like McCann taking getting that extra 2 minutes off of the penalty there, and kind of the whole situation around the team maybe standing up for themselves or being better about picking their spots. And I know there's, like Viren, picking their spots is not a strength of this team. Coop, we went from not standing up for ourselves at all. Now we just do it willy-nilly in not ideal spots. Hopefully the next step is doing it at the right times. I do think that is like an element of it that you do see from teams that aren't used to being in a situation like that. And again, to be fair, hockey is changing. Hockey is evolving, and I am appreciative of that. You used to have where every team in the league played like Calgary, right? Or the vast majority of them played like Calgary, but now fewer and fewer of them are. And you see a lot more teams kind of like the Kraken where, yeah, they're going to stand up for each other like when certain things happen, but they're not going to be kind of looking to go out there and I don't want to say like injure people because that's obviously a step too far, but go out there and really try to stir things up each and every shift and have a line maybe dedicated to doing that and really trying to make the game kind of more physical and lay out big hit after big hit after big hit and build momentum that way. It does feel like the NHL is kind of finally as a whole caught on to, you know what, just being a more skilled team actually will win you a lot more games.
Yeah, but there are still teams like Calgary that do impose themselves physically, and I do want to respond to Viren, who asked me more directly. You said the Montour penalty was fine because quote Pospisil needs to know not to run around. Do you think it made any difference to his behavior, or are the Flames going to do Flames things regardless? And I think that's a great question, Viren. I did say that in the Discord, and that I was okay with the Montour penalty early on in the game. Pospisil kind of makes that hit on Burakovsky after the puck's gone, and I know he thinks maybe the puck's going to stay with Burakovsky, but he makes that hit. It's a little bit late. It's kind of away from the puck. And that one for me was borderline enough where it just felt like, okay, he's setting the tone for what he's going to do. And I don't mind going after him, given that it's that specific player. Anybody else on the Flames, I'd say, don't risk it. It's fine. But Pospisil specifically, I think he needs to be sent a message early in the game that kind of thing wasn't going to be tolerated. And as far as whether it made any difference, look, I think there's an element, an extent to which he's just going to do what he's going to do. But I will say, I don't think he crossed the line at any point later on in the game. I mean, he kind of stayed within the bounds. He was a tough forechecker. He laid some hits, but he didn't do anything dirty in this one. And I don't know whether that had an impact, but at least the success was there. He didn't cross the line later. And I'll compare it to the one where McCann steps in, where that's just a clean hit from Pahal. I don't know what more you want him to do. Like, he's just stepping up to defend the defensive zone. And the way that he can most effectively do that is by making really solid body contact. And so I think it is one where you really have to pick your spots. I'm okay with the first one. I'm not okay with the second one. Also, I think it was kind of a suicide pass by Cale Fleury there, where puts his teammate Burakovsky in a bad spot there, where the defenseman, of course, is just going to skate into him and lay him out. So that's where I think you have to make the distinction.
Yeah, I agree with you on all of that. Like I said earlier, right? If Vince Dunn steps up into Morgan Frost and lays out a big, legal hit, keep it legal. That's obviously what I want. But you lay out a hit, that Morgan Frost goal doesn't happen. That kickstarts the scoring for Calgary. Like, it is a tool that you can use to defend your zone. Like, it is something that, again, it's less and less a part of the game. It is something that the Kraken don't do, but it is a tool that's available to them, and sometimes it is the best tool, or it's one that definitely makes sense in that moment. I will say that one of the things I want to talk about on the next deep dive, RJ, is the Kraken and the issues they have attacking in transition and particularly entering the offensive zone. And I've kind of identified 3 things that I think kind of are what they're struggling with when it comes to entering the zone and being able to attack in transition. And one of the ones that I have is them making passes to guys that are just completely covered and then expecting them to somehow enter the zone. And I think that Berkey one from Cale Fleury is a good example of that, of where's Berkey supposed to go? Like, how is he supposed to enter the zone? I get that he's the guy up.
His only path is really right into the defender. Yeah,
right. I get that he's up there at the blue line, but you've got to make a better read than that if you're Cale Fleury, because even if Berkey doesn't get laid out there, like, obviously, you're sending him into that suicide pass territory and he gets laid out, and you don't want to do that to your teammate. Even if he doesn't get laid out, he's not going to be able to enter the zone. Like, they're still going to step up, body him, stick on puck, get the puck away. You're not getting a controlled zone entry out of that scenario. So just don't make the pass. And I feel like that's one of the kind of 3 things that I said I'll talk about on the deep dive, but they really need to work on. But that was a really good example of one of those situations. I feel like there's a lot of times the Kraken are kind of moving up ice, and they either think they have to give it to the person who's the farthest up ice because that's just like what they're supposed to be doing. So, like, I have to hit the guy closest to the blue line. Or they'll see, maybe there's a lot of examples of one defender in front of them, and they feel like they then have to move the puck, and then they'll move it to somebody who has multiple defenders around them. It's like, no, take your chance with the one guy in front of you. Like, Berkey had 3 Flames around him, like, in the vicinity. I just, like I said, I don't really know where he was supposed to go with that one. I don't see the logic in making that play, other than it's just players thinking like, well, the system tells me to do this and then just doing that. And so maybe that brings up the bigger question around like, when do you follow systems? When do you have to trust your eyes, and how difficult that is? And you're having to make these split-second decisions and all of that kind of stuff. It's a much bigger can of worms, better for the podcast, but that was a good example of it. And so that's why I wanted to mention it now. And then when people listen to the podcast, you'll kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. We do have a super chat here from Light. Hold on, forget whatever dumb thing we're talking about. So definitely worth after what I was just talking about. Yanni Newman beat a guy in the skate race, the All-Star game today. What? And
what do you have to say about this, Dylan?
I did catch this. Okay. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Largely, I have not watched the All-Star Skills competition because I want to watch the whole broadcast. It was being broadcast free on YouTube. It'll be there still. And the All-Star game for the AHL tomorrow will also be broadcast for free on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch it. That makes it very easy to watch and enjoy it. It'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow night. I did catch this one moment though, because we just kind of like tuned in a little bit to kind of see some stuff. And then like tomorrow morning, I'm going to watch the whole thing all the way through and see how all the Firebirds did. Yanni Newman gets announced as one of the participants in the speed skating competition, RJ. And I basically did what Light did there. What? Like what is going on here? And you know what? He went out there. He looked fast. The time wasn't that fast, but he looked fast. He looked good. I like the way he handled his crossovers. His stride has taken, well, large strides in getting better. Just not to make the obvious pun that's available there. His stride does look a lot better. He's using the length that he has in his lower body to generate more power. I still think there's room for improvement there, but just year over year, him spending the time with the Firebirds coaching staff this year for the full season in Coachella Valley versus last year where he predominantly played in Liga over in Finland. He has definitely gotten to be a much better skater. I thought he looked very good in that speed skating challenge there. The game tape, he still does the weird hunch where he makes his body like a 90-degree angle, and it just does not look healthy. And as somebody who has back problems, I just want to like shake him and just be like, save yourself, don't do this. But I will give him credit. He did not finish last in the speed skating, and I think that shows just how much work he has put into everything.
Yeah, and that's good development that you do want to see for him, knowing that he's working on the skating. Yeah, you can fix the hunch at some point. Just talk to him during dev camp. Be like,
Yeah. And Jeremy saying Newman's win does get an asterisk because the other guy fell down. That's okay. Fair. Myron pointing out the results page has him at 14.443. Next highest is 13.870. He was not like like I said, he was not the fastest. He wasn't close to the fastest. There is that asterisk there, but we can still say technically
he didn't fall.
He
made the lap around. He didn't fall.
He didn't fall. He made the lap around, and that was better than somebody else.
Oh man, I can't wait to watch that.
It is really good. One of the things that they also did that I thought was really interesting, RJ, and this is why I think people should watch this. Imagine the NHL All-Star Skills Competition having something like this, RJ. They did a goalie challenge where they had two shooters that alternated shooting pucks so that the goalie had to make a save, get across, make a save, get across, make a save, get across, make a save.
I think the NHL did that in the 90s. And there's some great video highlights. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that they do that.
Yeah. So I thought that was a lot of fun. Like I said, I only watched like 2 minutes of the whole thing kind of off and on, but it was some really good stuff. And I do genuinely hope that people go and check it out, especially because it's in Coachella Valley, all the love for the Firebirds and everything going on there. It's really cool to see, and definitely the fan base out there deserves something like this. And then speaking of Yanni Newman, Sean asking, will we see Yanni Newman in Seattle sometime this season? Is that even a fair question? I think it's a fair question, Sean, but I also think the answer is no. We will not see Yanni Newman this year in Seattle. I think barring kind of more injuries or some sort of more than expected selling at the deadline here soon, RJ. I just don't know that there's going to be that many spots up top. And I think that there's maybe some other guys that are closer to being full-time NHLers that you're going to want to get those late season NHL reps, like a Ryan Winterton.
Agreed. It's going to be older guys like Winterton, and that's fine because Newman, I think, is developing much better in CV. Get him those reps. You're in no hurry to bring him up.
Yep, definitely. Now, speaking of it, going way back towards the beginning of chat, RJ, one of the things that people did talk about was the trade deadline upcoming. We have seen a bunch of moves made here recently, RJ, around the NHL. It does seem like general managers are trying to get a jump on things. I mean, we're still more than a month away from the trade deadline, and big deals are going down. Do you think we see any movement from the Kraken here soon?
I do wonder now because I was thinking if the Kraken won this game, or particularly in regulation, right? They're still a team that, at least in the management, is trying to convince themselves that they weren't out of it. I don't know how you have any illusion about what's going on at this point after losing this game in regulation. So I do wonder if you start to really seriously listen to offers on some players. And I point to the Sharks trading away Mikael Granlund that they did, I think a few days ago. And their GM Mike Greer was talking about it, and he said essentially what happened is just that, yeah, the Stars met our price. We set a price for the player, they met it, so why wait to make the deal? And I feel like that might be the case with Ron Francis as far as just setting a price for certain guys that they might move. And if a team wants to step up and meet that price, I think now you're probably a little bit more willing to do it. Then again, I mean, your players, like your top asset you're going to trade away is Yanni Gourde probably, and I don't think anyone's trading for him right now. Probably going to have to wait on that injury wise, but it wouldn't surprise me to see maybe one deal before the Four Nations, just given that they're legitimately out of it at this point.
Yeah. And then Coop here, I don't know if you've moved to the bottom of chat yet, but with all we're talking about, I think it's worth shouting out Monty for making that last second goal possibility on top of the diving sweep check. That was really pretty, RJ.
It was. I mean, I loved Brandon Montour in the third period. He was everywhere. He was all over the ice. He was trying to make things happen however he could. And there was another diving. I think he just missed the breakup there, but earlier in the third period where he came in diving on the back check to try and stop a Flames player. I mean, it was full effort all the time from Montour in the third period. And one thing I did want to mention too, and I did tweet about it, and you can tell me if you agree or not, Dylan, but I thought this is the best the Dunn Montour pairing has looked all
I agree.
season. It finally clicked, I think, where ideally what it looks like on paper is just a pair of two really good offensive defensemen who you put them out together with a good forward line. They should be able to just pressure the other team. And yeah, maybe they get burned back the other way, but they're able to help you get back into a game you're trailing. And this is the first time I felt like that actually translated onto the ice. Vince Dunn was great moving the puck up the ice. He'd often see Montour kind of springing up as like a fourth forward and get him the puck. And so I just love the dynamic between those two. Montour even working below the goal line, feeding it back up to Dunn, holding the point. It just looked awesome. This is what I was kind of hoping for from that pair.
Right. And I think that it did what it was intended to do. It really made the Kraken feel dangerous late when they were out there and everything. And I also think that Alexiak Larson, as then the pair that gets created as you're kind of stacking offensively, that first defensive pair also played really well. And I thought that pairing played better than expected by me, right? Like I had lower expectations for how they would perform when put into that position, but I thought that they did a good job. Obviously, Dunn and Montour, they're out there together. Kraken able to just out-generate chances against the Calgary Flames. They ended up finishing that defensive pair 72.5% of expected goal share. Alexiak Larson, 75.7% of expected goal share, according to Money Puck, when they were out there. Now, done differently, where Montour, Dunn are just out generating chances. They're just producing and they're just throwing pucks on net. And the team is creating offensive chances. Alexiak Larson, just kind of a shutdown pair. Not much happened when they were out there, right? Actual shots on goal, for and against, 3-3, very low event, but in a game like this, if you are going to kind of stack one of your defensive pairs, stack the situations in which you need to be aggressive and attack and get back into the game, having then another defensive pair that can go out there and just kind of keep the game even and nothing's really happening and you don't have to worry about bad things happening, that's the ideal situation for you if you are going to have that offensive stack on the other side.
Yeah, and I want to see more of it too. I want more data on this just to see if this works. And I hope that's something the coaching staff wants to see more, just to know as we look forward to maybe next season, right? All four of those guys are under contract for next year. See if that's something that you can play with a little bit more.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's see here. I know there's a lot of chat in here at the bottom about Grubauer being with the Firebirds and Sprong and Grubauer maybe taking away time and hurting the development of the players with the Firebirds. I don't think that's the case. I think having in the instance of Daniel Sprong, having somebody who is going to be that skilled playing with them, players who play with skilled players get better. That is just kind of a proven track record. That's why I've been kind of so crazy. If you listen to like the last prospect chat, if you listen to my thoughts on the situations with like, Hockey Canada for like World Juniors versus the rest of the countries, where those other countries have programs where it's always best on best and they're forming these national teams and their best players are playing with their other best players, competing for ice time, competing for chances, really pushing each other. I do think that is really important. And I think having a player as skilled as Sprong on the Firebirds, where they then have to elevate their game to get ice time from him, all of that stuff is good. I think Sprong's, maybe larger presence away from just being a skilled player on the ice, maybe, you could argue offsets some of that, but that's, I think, a separate issue. And then with Grubauer, I just think like having an NHL goalie back there is probably better than having an AHL level goalie back there. I think that the Firebirds really each of their first 2 seasons proved that as well, just because it means that your team, they bail you out of some chances. You still made that mistake and it was a bad one, but because you have a goalie who's maybe too good to be there, it gets saved instead of going in. You're able to win more games having guys like that down there at the AHL level. And I think that that's really important for young players to build their confidence.
Yeah, well said. On the Grubauer thing too, it's not like he's even taking time away from Nicholas Coco. Like all the games that Grubauer is starting, I know it's just been one so far, but I think the way they're going to do it, those are games that Steska would have started anyway. You're not taking time away from a young goalie, and really it only hurts you if he's just allowing so many goals that he's taking you out of games. But through one game, he certainly hasn't done that. He won the game, was really strong after a little bit of a shaky start. I think like 930 save percentage or something. And that's all you can ask for from your goalie.
Right. And I think, so a lot of this is just going to be to get him right. We'll see if maybe they call him back up after the Four Nations tournament, depending on how Grubauer plays there, if they feel like his game has gotten right and they decide to call him back up or not. But I do think that it's a good situation for him right now down there. We'll do a kind of a quick last call here down at the bottom of chat before we wrap things up from this one. Again, though, I just want to reiterate, like, it's been a while, RJ, since I felt like the Kraken really could do it as far as completing the comeback. And I really did feel through the last like 6 or 7 minutes tonight that the Kraken were going to get it done.
Yeah, I did too. I was kind of convinced, especially the fact that I wasn't able to go to the game. I just figured, okay, man, they're going to have some epic comeback.
I'm telling people, but yes, like right when the game starts, he texts me and he's like, Joey's going to get his goal tonight. And I knew that you were probably still thinking that even when it was 3-0 Flames, just because I know you
somehow. Yeah, I was thinking at the very least, epic comeback win coming right when they're down 3-0. I just figured that's the way it was going since I couldn't be there in person. That that's kind of what had to happen, but didn't turn out that way. But yeah, this push seemed more legit than recent times that we've seen, right? This did really feel like that 1 week stretch or something a few weeks ago where it just felt like it was inevitable. As long as they put that push on, they would come back. But I think the ultimate lesson is you just can't afford to dig yourself that deep a hole. And it's one I hope they internalize when looking back at this season. It's just not something you can get away with consistently.
Yeah. And then this one from Samia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. How does somebody like Pospisil get away with his dirty hits? And it's one where, Department of Player Safety kind of plays a role in this, and the way that they have levied suspensions, at least certainly here recently. But hockey has a long history of enforcer type players who do have questionable tastes in the hits that they dole out, RJ, and the decisions that they decide to make out there on the ice. It's just one of those things that hasn't really been totally cleaned up, but it's one where until departments of player safety take it more seriously to dole out longer and longer suspensions that actually, kind of discipline these players into making better choices, they're just going to kind of keep being able to come out and play that way because there's really no incentive for them not to, if they're on a team that wants them to be playing that way.
Exactly. And so it's something where the Department of Player Safety needs to just step up and do their job, and they haven't fully done that. I will say Pospisil, he at least did get suspended 3 games for the hit on Vince Dunn last year, which compared to the 20 or so games Vince Dunn missed, not really equivalent there. And it didn't appear that he learned his lesson. I mean, he had another dirty hit 5-minute major on Josh Morrissey later on that season. And so it seems he hasn't learned his lesson. And with Pospisil, the other way you can usually deal with a player like that is, okay, they know that if they're going to have a hit that's dirty, if they're going to play across that line, they're going to have to square up and drop the gloves and fight somebody. And that's the other consequence they face. But Pospisil is this unique situation where he refuses to fight anybody because of concussion issues he's had, all while doling out concussions to other people. And it's just, I mean, I think just in his specific unique case, it's absolutely gutless behavior from him. And I don't know how you teach somebody like that lesson, given that he's had the concussion issues himself. I don't know what more it will take for a human being to learn that lesson, to not dish those out to other people, but it appears he hasn't. So I don't know. That's really where the Department of Player Safety comes in, where he has to miss games and lose out on money.
Right. Like that is their job, is to step up and be that, because you don't always want to have to leave it up to the players, because we have seen really terrible situations happen in the past around this. And while it is gutless, I'm totally with you. I am happy at least that we're past this point in the NHL where when a player does do stuff like that and then doesn't want to answer the bell for it, or the other team doesn't feel like they answered the bell enough, they then go after them and do something reckless towards them. There's been, really awful things have happened in the NHL when stuff like that has happened in the past. There are numerous instances of it. I'm not going to get into it all right now, but I am happy about that one aspect of this, is nobody has gone after Pospisil and done something reckless and dangerous to try to, put him in his place because he won't stand up and kind of fight for his actions there. So I do want to just highlight that. Let's do rapid fire here, because we did have some stuff, and the puppy is vaguely around here. I'll grab her in a second. But Stratic does have a good question here. I had a question about Schwartz. In the past, he hasn't always been able to practice as much due to condition. Is that still the case?
All right. So yeah, you team me up with that one. I'll let you go get the dog. I think it's improved since a couple seasons ago, and he is practicing more. I mean, if you see, he'll be in practice line rushes and he'll be practicing a lot more. So I think it has certainly improved from a couple years ago. And that is something that, we do see being in the room. And so, all right, Dylan having a little trouble finding the dog. But I'm again, we don't ask him about these things. We don't know the details of it, but at least just seeing from how he's practiced and just how he looks, it has improved quite a bit. So I'm kind of happy for him in that regard. And then, there she is. There she is.
This is Maggie. This is Maggie, my mom's new puppy. I'm down here helping take care of her.
Oh, yes.
After my mom's accident. So she's a real sweetheart. She is 6 months old, and boy, is she a puppy who is 6 months old, just constantly chewing on my hands like this and constantly running around, needing attention, needing all of that good stuff. But she is also very, very sweet. And definitely a love bug, as everybody can tell here on Postgame Live. But
yeah, I keep saying she's got the Patrick Marleau eyebrows. It's kind of hard to see in this angle with the camera, but just.
I put some posts and some pictures in the Discord and the Pets of ECH channel, and I'll put some more in there as things go on. But yeah, so it's good stuff from her. Let's see. B, one of my minor worries is not going to happen. Bobblehead night, if he's not back up with the Kraken by then. Do they cancel it? Talk about Grubauer. Call him up just for that game. Do it without him? I don't know. I think they just do it without him, just like if he was injured.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how they would handle it if he's not up. Is just, you do it without him. Unfortunately.
Yes, you're just chewing on my hands. Yes, it's your favorite thing to do. Scott, how long does the Four Nations tournament last? Is it just a one-day thing supplemental for the All-Star game? No, it's going to be like a full 2 weeks in which the players kind of have off, and they'll be doing everything there.
Yeah, I believe it is February 12th to the 20th.
Yeah. Maddie zone entry in the third hasn't got any love, and I was stoked in it. No, that zone entry was good. His controlled zone entries have gotten better and better. Obviously, we talk a lot about the controlled zone exits, but the controlled zone entries from Maddie have definitely been a place that he has improved this season.
Yeah, and they're more exciting from him than most. I feel like if you see a really good one from Matty where he's skating up with speed, I don't know, it does get me excited too.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate all the kind, messages there for my mom. She is doing okay. Her mobility is just limited right now. She took a tumble down the stairs, which is not great. It sounds worse than it ended up being. Nothing got broke, anything like that. But a lot of inflammation, bone bruising, all that kind of stuff. So mobility limited. I was already coming down here for the AHL All-Star game. Unfortunately, kind of having to miss that to be here and help take care of the dog. But got to do what you got to do. Appreciate it though from everybody there. I think that's going to do it for this post-game live, RJ, unless you have any kind of closing thoughts.
No, I was just going to commend you there. More detailed injury report than most NHL teams would give. So good job.
Yes. I guess I could have said mid body injury, day to day. I feel like.
Okay, that's good. Glad to hear that.
Since she got the steroids, really helped with the inflammation. So more day to day than week to week.
Love to hear it.
Yep, definitely. Appreciate it there, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll end the stream here before it gets longer than the first period we got tonight, and we'll let you all go. I want to thank Queen Anne Beer Hall one more time for sponsoring the podcast. As always, check out that Moss Bay Hall Lunar New Year menu. It sounds like a lot of fun, and we will see you all next time.